Gittin, Daf Samach Beis Amud Aleph. Courtesy versus caring. Rav Kahana Omale Shalma Lamar. Courtesy is an invention of the British. That's to enable people who despise one another to get on and to do business together, which is the definition of courtesy that one of my important rabbis, Reb Chaim Lifshitz, gave me. Reb Chaim Lifshitz had an important influence. He's one of the great thinkers of our times. And he had a very big influence on me. He was a very close Talmud of the Sridei Eish of Rabbi Chiel Weinberg in his later years. Rabbi Chiel Weinberg was a Talmud of Rabbi Naftali Amsterdam. Rabbi Naftali Amsterdam was a Talmud of Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. So that's how that line works. And that's how he defined courtesy. Courtesy is an action. Caring is different. Caring is an action that has a feeling attached to it. Courtesy doesn't need a feeling. Nobody cares how you feel when you say good morning or you say how are you. Nobody says, do you really mean that? Are you serious? You're wishing me a good morning? Thank you. Nobody says that. Who cares? You say good morning. It's just a courtesy. It's a way of recognizing another person. It has no deep meaning. And you're not expected to really feel it. When you say, how are you? You're not expecting the person to answer you. The last thing you want is for the person to give you their list of complaints for the day. How are you? Fine, thanks. And you? Whether you're fine or you're not fine, it doesn't matter. It's just a courtesy. And a courtesy is just that practice that we do to be able to get on with each other, to recognize one another and to be able to start a conversation. We'll see that in Torah it's very different. The Gemara says, "Ve'ein koflin shalom lovdei le'oved kechovim." That's from the Mishnah, daf beforehand, two daf beforehand, on the daf nun tes amud beis. You don't say shalom twice to an idol worshipper, to a non-Jewish person. It is not a person who keeps the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Ein koflim shalom lo'oved kechovim. You don't say it twice. You say it once. Rav Chisda makdim v'yahiv luhu shalmeh. Rav Chisda used to be careful to always be the first person to say shalom. Now we learned back in Brachos on Daf Vav that applies. You should always be makdim shalom. And Rav Chisda, even with non-Jewish people, with strangers, that's how he would always say shalom first. Says the Ran on the Rif in our Gemara, that was so that the other person wouldn't have a chance to say it first, because we've learned that if somebody says shalom to you, you've got to say shalom, shalom. You've got to say it twice. You give back to somebody more than they gave you. So if somebody greets you, you greet them with even more. And he didn't want to have to do that with an idol worshipper, to say shalom, to give him a bracha. So he used to say shalom first as a courtesy, and then the other person would have to say shalom, shalom twice. Rav Kahana omale shalma lamar. Rav Kahana would say shalom to the person, lamar, sir, shalom, sir. Says Rashi, why ain't koflim? Because the whole reason of saying shalom to an idol worshipper is mishum darkei shalom, is because of courtesy, because it's darkei shalom. If that's the case, it's just a way of peace. If that's the case, one shalom is enough. To say it twice means you're emphasizing it. And you don't want to wish shalom on somebody who's living an immoral life. So you say it once as a courtesy. There's no necessity to say it more than that. Shalma lamar, this is a fascinating Rashi, and the center of our learning today. V'lo haya mitkaven levarcho ela libo haya lerabo. Says Rashi, when he said Shalma Lamar, sir, Shalom, he says to this idol worshipper. Who's sir in his mind? Sir is his Rebbe. And he's saying, Shalom Lamar, my Rebbe, Shalom. But the idol worshipper thinks it's a courtesy. He thinks they're saying Shalom to him. So why doesn't he just say as a courtesy? Why doesn't he just say Shalom without thinking anything? Meaningless, just thinking it as a courtesy. Because Shalom is God's name. To say Shalom without intending it as a bracha is Motzi Shem Shemayim Levatola. That's mentioning Hashem's name for no reason. If you use shalom to greet somebody and bless somebody, then it's okay. We use shalom in our greetings. But if you're greeting an idol worshipper and you're just saying it as a courtesy, that's not okay. So he says it intending, I'm saying a bracha, but I'm saying a bracha to my Rebbe. This person thinks I'm saying it to him, that's fine. Asks Tosfos, this is deceitful. He thinks you're giving him a bracha and your mind is somewhere else. You see from here the power of the bracha. That we're worried that it's even goynev das, that he thinks he's getting a real bracha from you when you say shalom. And the fact is you're saying shalom to your Rebbe. That's goynev das habrios, that you're not allowed to mislead people, whether it's Jewish people or non-Jewish people or idol worshippers. How can you do that? Answers the Malay Haroyim with a Zohar from Parshas Vayishlach. where the Meloi HaRoim says the Zohar holds the Ein B'zeh Gnevas Das. This is not misleading. V'chein osa Yaakov b'shtachavo le'esav, and that's what Yaakov did when he bowed to Esav. V'chein David ma she'omer lenovo v'lamatim kol lechaya kulu likud shebrichu koma. And David also meets Novel, who's a despicable individual, and he says, Kol lechai, shalom lecha, shalom lebeitecha. He says, he uses Hashem's name and he gives them the shalom. It's all about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're not talking to that person, so you see it's not Genevas Das. But it's not so simple. Let's look at the Zohar inside. When Esav passed before Yaakov, Vayishtachu arza sheva pa'amim ad gishtam ad achiv. Yaakov bowed down 7 times before he got to Esav. Rabbi Lozer potach v'omer. Rabbi Lozer opens in the Zohar and he says, Ki lo tishtachaveh lekel acher, ki Hashem kano shemo. You're not allowed to bow down to other gods. V'chi Yaakov diyu shlema da'avon. And is Yaakov, who's the most perfect of all the avot. Is it possible? Heich sagid le'lahu rosha de'esav. How could he have bowed down to that wicked Esav? Di'iyu besitra de'el acher. Esav is the embodiment in his soul of a foreign god. He stands for false values. Esav is the Western world today. It stands for false values. And he's bowing down to those false values as we do today. Bowing down to the values of the West rather than checking them against the values of Torah. Sometimes they're aligned, sometimes they're not. If you bow down to Esav and what Esav stands for, you're bowing down to another god. And if you say it's because of the Gemara and Megillah, because the Gemara and Megillah ask the same question. The Gemara and Megillah answers, Tale b'idnei sagile. Even a fox, when he's on top, the other animals come and bow down to him. When a sly person is doing well and is on top and has power, you've got to play the power. You can't ignore the power. Lavachi, that's not so, says the Zohar. So the Zohar is disagreeing with the Gemara. Or the Gemara learns differently from the Zohar. Esav ke'el acher. Esav is not a fox. Esav is not a politician who's risen to power. Esav represents another value system. Esav represents another religion. Esav represents the Ribono Shel Olam. Yaakov lo yizkud lahu sitra lahu chulka klal. Surely Yaakov could not possibly be bowing down to what Esav stands for. But you've got to learn it from Shmuel, from Sefer Shmuel, where David sends his messengers to Noval. Noval was married to Abigail. The Tanakh tells us Abigail was a tzaddikus and Noval was a Rosha. And Noval comes from the house of Kalev ben Yefuneh, the Tanakh says, and so he's a relative of David, and David was hoping that Noval would give him some help. He's a cousin, he's a relative, and David needs some help. He sends the messages to Noval asking for help, and he says to them, Kol lechai, so lechaim, he says to him, V'ata shalom, v'veitcha shalom, v'chol asher lecha shalom. He tells the messengers, say that to Noval, Kol lechai. And haven't we learned that you're not allowed to be the first to say shalom to a wicked person? How could it be that David said this pasuk to Noval? But we've established already, says the Zohar and Sefer Shmos, begin the kasher le'lechai. When he said, V'amartem ko lechai, what he's saying to his messengers is, and you should say thus to chai olomim. And then you can say the thing, shalom, v'ata shalom, v'veitcho shalom, v'chol asher lecho shalom. You're addressing Hashem, and you're intending to connect Noval to Hashem. V'chashiv Noval da'alei ka'omar, and Noval thinks that he's talking to him. Noval won't realize that you're talking to the Ribono Shel Olam. Noval will think that you're talking to him. As it says, Vayishtachu Yisrael al rosh hamita, like it says, Yaakov bowed down to the head of the bed. V'chi legabi devarei sagid, is he really bowing down to his son? Elo la'atre deshchinta ko koro v'sagid. He's bowing down, he sees the Shechina at the head of the bed, and he's bowing down to the Shechina. Oif hacha, the same applies here. V'hu avar lifneihem, what does the Torah said? And he was walking past him. Who's the he? Mai v'hu. Do Shechinte alo du azlo kameh. Yaakov saw the Shechina, and he bowed down 7 times to the Shechina, not to Esav. But Esav thought he was bowing down to him. That's the Zohar. So how does the Meloi HaRoim says, you see, it's not Genevas Das. The Zohar has just made it worse. So all the Zohar has told us is Yaakov did it, and David HaMelech did it. What does that help us? Tosfos's question still applies. Isn't that Genevas Das? So to answer Tosfos's questions, there are two principles we have to know. The first principle is to deeply understand the difference between a courtesy and an act of caring, and to understand that when a person from the Western world, when Esav expects a greeting, he doesn't care what you're thinking. Have you ever been asked when you greet somebody, do you really mean that? Has it ever happened to you? I've never heard of such a thing. I've heard of people saying he didn't greet me, or you didn't greet me. You walked right past me, you didn't greet me. That's a terrible accusation. I'm terribly sorry. I'm offended, you didn't greet me. I'm very sorry, Shalom Aleichem, good morning. Okay, fine, thanks. How do you know I mean it? I'm just saying it, so now you won't feel offended. The answer is, I don't care if you mean it. Just say it. That's what a greeting is. Say good morning to somebody, you walk past somebody, you greet them. The greeting is not, you don't have to have kavanah for the greeting. It's not davening. And the other person doesn't care. That's not what he's asking for. That's why it's not Genevas Das. If all I want from you is the form, if all I want from you is the statement, the courtesy, and I give you that which you want, that's not Genevas Das. That's not misleading you. You don't care what I'm thinking. So I'm thinking about my Rebbe. I'm bowing down to Hashem, not to you. But the fact is I bow down. Do you think that when King Charles was walking down the aisle at his coronation, he stopped at Chief Rabbi Sir Ephraim Mervis and he said, Effie, tell me, you just bowed down to me. Who were you really bowing down to? The king didn't say that. He doesn't care. I walk past, you bow down, that's fine, checked off, you did the right thing. But in your mind, you're bowing down to the Rebbeinu Shem, you're not bowing down to another person. In Western society, we just want the form. We just want the courtesy. We don't care whether it comes from your heart or not. It doesn't make a difference. So if I give you what you want, that's not Genevas Das. I'm not stealing your mind. I'm not misleading you. If I give you what you want, I'm misleading you if I initiate it in order to mislead you. So that's an important yesod in Genevas Das that we need to know. That the Genevas Das misleading people is when you initiate it. But when somebody asks for something from you and you give them exactly what they want from you, they want the courtesy, they want the acknowledgement, they want the greeting. I give you the greeting. I don't care what's in your mind. So now I'm free to do something else with my mind. My mind is about my Rebbe, my mind is about the Rebbeinu Shem. So that's the first yesod, is Genevas Das applies when you initiate it in order to mislead, not when you give a person something that they ask for. The second principle comes from a question from the first principle. If that's the case, why didn't Yaakov just bow down to Esav as a courtesy and have in his mind, this is just a courtesy, it's nothing. It's like bowing down to the king in Buckingham Palace, it's nothing. Why doesn't David HaMelech, when he says to go and say to Nova, but don't have anything in mind, just say it as a courtesy? The answer is, and here's the second yesod, for a Ben Torah, for a Jew, we don't do meaningless. We don't do things that have no meaning. We don't say a greeting that is just a courtesy. That's a Western thing. If we say something, we have intention, we have kavanah. A Jew doesn't do anything without kavanah, without intentionality, without deliberateness. If a person says something, that he's thinking something, he's feeling something, and that's what he's saying is drawing on that feeling and projecting it outwards in the form of a communication that another person can receive. But the communication comes from his heart and his mind, it doesn't come from his lips. In Western society, the communication is from the lips. That's all that matters. And people communicate, and you press a like on a Facebook page. It doesn't mean you like the person. It's irrelevant. Press a button. It's from the lips and outwards, but not a Ben Torah. When a Ben Torah says something, when a Ben Torah acts, it has meaning. And if the meaning can't be, I'm blessing you because you're a Rosha, then the meaning has to be, I'm blessing my Rebbe or I'm blessing the Rebbeinu Shem. There's got to be some meaning in it. It cannot be meaningless. And so with those two Yesodis, we understand the Sugya, we understand the piece of Gemara, we understand the Tosfos, we understand the Zohar, and we understand the Mloya Roim, and we understand Rashi. That understanding, is it deceitful to mislead a person this way? No, it's not deceitful because he asked for the courtesy, that's all he wants. But that puts the Jew in a difficult position. All he wants is a courtesy. But I don't do courtesy, I do caring. And I don't care about you. You're a Rosha, you're a wicked, immoral person. I'm not going to bless you with God's name. Blessing with God's name, that's for God or for my Rebbe. The courtesy, that's for you because that's all you want. And since that's all you want, it's not Genevas Das, it's not misleading.